Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 is the worst game since Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. In fact, this game right here should not exist. And I'm not saying that just to be funny or hyperbolic. I mean, literally, this was not meant to exist from the start. The universe has an ironic sense of humor where history does tend to repeat itself no matter how much we try to avoid it. Let's play a little game, shall we? And your job here is to figure out if I'm talking about Modern Warfare 3 or Modern Warfare 3. Are you ready? Let's go. Question 1. What game was originally conceived by Infinity Ward, but had to pull in Sledgehammer Games for help? Yeah, it's kind of a tricky one, isn't it? It's hard to say. Yeah, I don't know. Well, all right, let's try another one. Question 2. Which title was criticized for being mostly a carbon copy of Modern Warfare 2? Man, yeah, this one's rough too, honestly. I'm just really not sure. Let's move on to another one. Question 3. Which title features the main character, Captain Price, his pal Soap, and a bad guy named Makarov? This one's really tricky, so take your time. But if you still don't know this one, question 4, which title had legal battles and or job layoffs behind the scenes around the time of its release? Still don't know? Okay, last one, we're almost done. Question 5, which title was originally DLC for the previous Modern Warfare 2 and was repackaged into a new title to be sold at full retail game Oh yeah, that one's pretty obvious, actually. But if you haven't caught on, yes, all of these questions could apply to both Modern Warfare 3s. By the way, MW3 is not an expansion pack. Do you remember when this was the narrative that was being pushed? Those of you paying attention around the time will recall when Activision at some point decided to make the call to switch plans to make Modern Warfare 3. Originally, the contents of MW3, for the most part, were meant to be a Year 2 premium expansion pack for Modern Warfare 2, which was a very financially successful game, I might note, and COD and Activision were on the precipice of breaking the cycle. This would have been the first year in which a mainline Call of Duty game would not come out in the fall. 2023 was supposed to be a year of premium DLC content for Modern Warfare 2. This much is guaranteed. The problem was, at some point in time, the call got made to bring in Sledgehammer, who just got done making Vanguard, mind you, to be the lead dev on a new project. Now, why was this choice made? Well, as Mr. Krabs so eloquently says,
money.
It was in Activision's best interest to release a new title, as this has a much greater chance of bringing in a brand new audience and increasing these right up front short-term sales, you know, as compared to a DLC for a game that's already a year old at this point. But here's where it gets interesting. I also speculate that Infinity Ward knew that this wasn't going to go very well and dumped it on Sledgehammer so that they didn't have to attach their studio and name and be responsible for it. Modern Warfare 2 was incredibly financially successful, and say what you want in regards to the quality and how much you enjoy it, etc. You know, there's a lot of criticism that can be levied at that game too, and I've already made my own tearing into it, but in the end, it still made Activision a metric shit zillion dollars, and there's no doubt that a premium DLC would have made even more money. I mean, hell, every single original Modern Warfare 2 map remastered, plus an extension to the campaign, and maybe even some other goodies as well. Like, this sounds pretty cool, to be honest, and it's kind of refreshing and unprecedented that COD is going down this route, which makes me excited for what so it just made it Modern Warfare 3. But this is actually the interesting part. Considering how well MW2 did, and given that Modern Warfare is basically Infinity Ward's baby, why the hell wouldn't Infinity Ward drop this as DLC in 2023? And then Treyarch drops their game in 2024, and after some time has passed and hype is built up, Infinity Ward then drops the finale, Modern Warfare 3, in 2025. That just makes so much more sense to me, but I was really shocked to hear that after MW2, Infinity Ward was just genuinely not interested in making another Modern Warfare game. They're kind of done with it from what it sounds like, which is why IW will not be making MW4 in 2026 or whatever. I don't even know where we are in the timeline, but this is kind of weird because it's like they've invested so much time and energy and money into rebooting Modern Warfare as a franchise, but got bored and quit right before they could properly wrap up the trilogy. It's like they were all sitting around a boardroom and were like, okay, we made Modern Warfare and we made Modern Warfare 2. What's the next step? And then somebody suggests like Modern Warfare 3, like, you know, wrap up the trilogy, and then they go,
Nah, I don't really feel like it.
Then they just tell Sledgehammer to slap something together with the rest of the scraps that they had played around with and said, call it Modern Warfare 3. We're just going to go do something else. It's very bizarre. This makes so many aspects of the game feel unfinished, cobbled together, and I think you can tell that this wasn't meant to be a real game. How do I know? Well, I spent my fair share of time at Sledgehammer Games this year before the game released, and I got to play it a little early, and I got firsthand experience with talking with some of the folks there as well, and I was able to paint a much clearer picture of what appears to be going on. The call to make Modern Warfare 3 its own mainline title seemed to be an Activision thing. Sledgehammer and Raven as well just kind of got wrangled into doing it, and they had this tossed on their plates unexpectedly and without much time to do anything with it.
Modern Warfare 3 this year is the complete package.
So in a lot of ways, I really can't blame Sledge all that much for the things that I don't like about this game. From everything we can gather, it's like they had to take a lot of the stuff Infinity Ward made and somehow turn it into a full standalone package, even though they're just working with bits and pieces and scraps from the year before. Now, I can understand why that would be difficult. However, I don't feel anybody's completely blameless here for reasons that I'll elaborate on here in just a second after this definitely unrelated and very real advertisement break.
The Hot Logic Bag is like the best product ever for reheating some of the foods that's already been made. Want to reheat some of that disgusting, delectable casserole that you made last week? Try the Hot Logic Bag. The Hot Logic Bag makes leftover meals that will be warm enough to eat in about 30 to 40 minutes, and it uses conduction heating, which, unlike microwaving, heats evenly, which means no overcooked meals. In fact, it'll be so good that leftovers come out tasting as good or better than as the first time. We guarantee that once you've had a frozen meal cooked this way, you'll want to drop the microwave for good. This is by far the best way to reheat and recycle stuff you've already made. Call the number on screen right now to get a Hot Logic Bag and reheat your slop today.
When we learned that Modern Warfare 3 was going to end up being a standalone title and Sledge would be the lead developer on it, it made me gravely concerned for the overall health and longevity and reputation of it, and all of my fears would come true when I first played MW3. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, honestly, there's no precedent for what a premium expansion is supposed to include, and thus there's no expectation for what really needs to be present in a package like that, roughly. But that would mean I think the community would be far more lenient on what is a 3-hour campaign and a multiplayer that's basically just MW2 multiplayer, but on the original Modern Warfare 2 maps. That means instead of Modern Warfare 2 having an expansion of Modern Warfare 2 maps, Modern Warfare 3 comes out and is basically Modern Warfare 2 remastered multiplayer maps with Modern Warfare 2 guns. And if that sounds dumb and confusing, that's because it is.
I'm like, oh my god. This is uncanny.
And so what I'm trying to say is if they had stuck to the expansion pack plan, maybe it wouldn't have sold quite as well, but it also wouldn't have had nearly as much controversy, which might also be the reason they changed it, but that's an Alex Jones level conspiracy theory for another day. What is true is making this content its own standalone title instead of an expansion pack completely changes the perception and thus expectation. A new Call of Duty title has certain bare minimums it needs to meet. The precedent has been set for like almost 2 decades now, and people are going to carry a greater expectation and set the bar higher if you're going to go out of your way to make it a new game. And I really feel MW3 had a huge perception problem that they never quite solved. But at Sledgehammer, I tried to help them. A few things I suggested after my initial impressions is, if they want to beat the "this is not an expansion" allegations, they're going to have to do some big things to make MW3 feel and play unique. I mentioned changing stuff like the HUD and the UI and the colors to make the layout feel more fresh and unique and standalone, and a plethora of what I felt like would be helpful additions to make Modern Warfare 3 feel very different in its own way, so it's not taken as a cheap copy or an MW2 clone. But ultimately, the answer I got was that they're trying their best to follow in the footsteps of Infinity Ward, and there's some changes they'd like to make, but it seems like IW more or less calls the shots at the end of the day. This is really depressing because it seems MW3 has a massive identity crisis, just like Vanguard did. And, think about it. When boiled down, what are the constituents that make up Modern Warfare 3? Well, we have a campaign that's obviously Modern Warfare 2 DLC repurposed. Its multiplayer is pretty much Modern Warfare 2 remastered with MW2 from last year's guns and stuff. And then Zombies is the Modern Warfare 2 DMZ mode, but with zombie AI. In fact, I think MW3 is the COD game with the least discernible identity. But here's the point where it comes down on. If they wanted to do an expansion, that's fine. You know, keep the style and feel of the game similar to Modern Warfare 2. Hell, it would even make more sense that way. But if what I'm trying to say is if you're going to call it MW3 and swear up and down that it's its own game and not just an expansion, then go all the way with it and put some effort into making it feel fresh and new and different, which they clearly did not.
Largest zombies, yeah.
This is one of the main issues as far as I'm concerned, and is even a greater symptom of the fact that every Call of Duty game has like damn near every single studio under the sun working on it. It's going to end up feeling very samey, you know, game to game, and that's a deeper discussion for another time. But basically, it just feels like they wanted the luxury of slapping on a brand new label and calling it a standalone title, but did none of the actual hard work required to make it really come into its own. They wanted the benefit of making a new game without actually making a new game. It's just so bizarre, man. You know, it's kind of like when Apple releases new iPhones with very minor changes to the previous model or stuff that no one asked for and calls it new. I just think that this was a horrible decision. I don't know exactly whose call it was to make this decision, but honestly, they up like big time. Now, to play devil's advocate for a moment, the original Modern Warfare 3 is also damn near the exact same game as Modern Warfare 2. In fact, the similarities between these two situations are quite striking, but at least in the original MW3 there was more of an effort to give it its own identity still, whereas the new MW3, and I'm not being hyperbolic, literally wanted to be like MW2, albeit with a few key changes to gameplay and new weapons and such. But it's not a one-to-one copy, but it's uncomfortably close. But it seems like a lot of those choices were imposed on Sledgehammer by Infinity Ward. For example, Sledgehammer actually wanted to go back to the Pick 10 system for multiplayer. For those unfamiliar, this was a far more simplified system before Gunsmith that was more based off like trade-offs and sacrifices to build your class, with less overall options, but each one was much more meaningful, and you could still have a lot of experimentation and variety by engaging in this system. This is what Black Ops 2 operated on and was massively successful. This would do away with, you know, IW's big Gunsmith innovation, and I'm not saying that a Pick 10 would automatically change MW3's multiplayer for the better, but it seems like Sledge fought hard to make changes that the community wanted after MW2, such as, you know, red dots not appearing on the minimap. In retrospect, a horrible idea that I have no clue what IW was cooking with that one. Slide canceling returns, and movement is much more fluid and responsive again, and they've even increased the health to 150 HP to make gunfights last a little bit longer, and, you know, plenty of other core gameplay adjustments that they know the community was begging for. The Pick 10 system probably would have been one of those, but it seems Infinity Ward told them no. And we'll talk about multiplayer in more detail later on in the video, but MW3 caught so much slack for its campaign. Even Christopher Judge, aka Kratos, grilled them at the Game Awards.
Fun fact, my speech was actually longer than this year's Call of Duty campaign. What?
I think MW3 has no doubt the worst campaign in Call of Duty history. Yes, and I know I said that about Vanguard, but it's even worse than Vanguard's campaign, which I wasn't sure was even possible. And no, it's not simply because of its length. Apparently, size does matter to a lot of the folks in the Call of Duty community, as one of the main complaints was the fact that it was so short. The whole campaign is about 3 hours in total runtime, when a typical COD campaign is usually anywhere from 5 to 8 hours. And I don't find this a problem inherently, as I'd prefer a COD game story to be short and sweet and to the point, as opposed to stretched and bloated. But that's assuming that there's enough good story to tell to justify its runtime. And MW3 doesn't even have nearly enough story to even fill 3 hours. And the question is, would a 3-hour campaign be more acceptable if it were DLC, an expansion pack instead? I don't know. The point is, you know, I wonder if people would be less harsh if it was an expansion instead of being touted as a full campaign on a new game. Either way, I don't care which way you frame it, it doesn't change the fact that this campaign is downright horrible. It is easily the most nonsensical, pointless, unfinished, embarrassing excuse for a story I've ever seen. The whole game feels like it was written by a bunch of airsoft players who like to speak in military talk when they play, and the tone and direction makes it feel like one of those awfully generic and forgettable action movies or shows on Netflix that you don't hear about or care for. But it makes the worst mistake of all and the cardinal sin of video game storytelling, and it's a trend I absolutely hate. They're so obsessed with making this game feel like a movie that they are forgetting to utilize the techniques and tactics that make video game storytelling so special. So much of this game is just cinematics, which it completely removes the player from the situation. Even in the old Call of Duty games, they're very cinematic, and that's what they were going for, and a lot of the storytelling would be done by letting the player be in the perspective of someone. At least usually letting you walk around or interact with things, even if it was very on the rails, you still felt like you were in the situation, and it made you feel like you were an active part in all this. The reliance on all of these CGI cutscenes is that it removes the player entirely from what's happening and makes you simply a spectator and not an active participant. I'm not saying cutscenes now and again aren't okay, and they can even be really effective when used properly, but this is my same complaint with Vanguard. So much good potential stuff in this campaign is just lathered over with these boring, forgettable cinematics. I feel like this is a pretty good example for comparison. In scenes where Makarov sniffs you out and kills someone, one is done through the eyes of the player, which feels much more personal, and the other is just some guy that we don't know or really care about or relate to that just questioned his plan or whatever in the last mission and then dies for it. It's so stupid, but I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Main point is Call of Duty keeps doing this thing where they're failing to use the things that make gaming so special in exchange for these movie-like cutscenes, which just don't impress the audience at all anymore. Yeah, maybe 10 or 11 years ago, but certainly not now. But we'll get back to all of that. Now, I want to quickly discuss the curious case of Modern Warfare Zombies, because there's a lot more to unpack with this one than you might imagine at first. However, from what sources have claimed and rumors that have been spread, this was apparently a mode that was a scrapped project, most likely a spin-off or another variation of Cold War's Outbreak, which already was supposed to be an extraction mode, by the way. But in all likelihood, when the decision was made to make Modern Warfare 3 a standalone title, Activision most likely made Treyarch dig up this scrapped game mode from the bin and include it in the game to help justify the $70 price tag. Because without zombies, what did MW3 really have to offer? A half campaign and a reskin of Modern Warfare 2 maps from 2009? Yeah, that just simply wouldn't cut it. But the addition of a new zombies mode was tacked on so that it could make the price tag a bit more reasonable. But it's even more interesting than that, and the rabbit hole goes much deeper. But first, I think we should start by dismantling Modern Warfare 3's campaign, and I'll lay out why I think this is a new low for the series, even though it didn't have to be. Okay, so let's do a very brief recap of the story from MW2 to lead us where we are now. In the last game, we follow Task Force 141 for the most part, with Ghost, Soap, and Gaz hunting down a guy named Hassan who is Zakayev's son. Shepard hires a group called Shadow Company commanded by Graves to get things done. The hunt for Hassan is mostly a wild goose chase until some help from Mexican Special Forces and Alejandro come to assist you. You also meet Valeria, who has an interesting history with Alejandro, and eventually Graves gets the order from Shepard to betray and kill TF-141 so that he can take the glory. The game ends with Hassan killed, and in this bar, they're like, there's another target, and he's not new, his name is Makarov. Then they do a Marvel movie post-credit scene for terrorism in the next game. Everyone gets hyped because they said no Russian, which is a thing from Call of Duty, but horribly out of context here.
I liked,
So the game opens up with the Coney group infiltrating a remote prison to rescue a prisoner. And can you guess what the prisoner's number is? That's right, 627 from the hit video game Captain Price 2, The Electric Boogaloo. Look, the 627 thing was a cute reference in Modern Warfare 2019 and MW2, sure, but I'm sitting here kind of just rolling my eyes because I'm just like, can we please do something original for once so that everything in the game doesn't have to be a reference? We're 5 minutes into the game and the creativity bankruptcy is already shown. Anyways, after a mission that closely resembles the Gulag missions from the past, we break into the prison to rescue what is indeed Makarov in the cell. And then he's all like,
Your commander, Vladimir Makarov, call sign SAR 90 actual. I have the con. Move to phase 3, out.
Taking back immediate control and wants to continue his plans after they escape. They get off the island successfully. Meanwhile, Farah is back for some reason, and her friend that we've never seen before is there and is like, hey, how's it going? And then she gets shot, and then Farah realizes that she has to tag GPSs onto these crates because the Coney group is trying to steal the American missiles for nefarious purposes. And in order to track them down, she'll need to put a device on them. We'll come back to the story in just a moment, but I want to talk about the structure of the gameplay in Modern Warfare 3 because there's a lot to discuss with this one. It's strange. Now, I was at Sledgehammer when they first revealed the campaign to us and how it would work. And I hate to say it, but unfortunately, I feel I was in the right to be very skeptical. We were told that the campaign would feature a mix of linear, on the rails, traditional scripted Call of Duty style missions, and then the other half would be their new innovative thing called open combat levels.
Modern Warfare 3, we're introducing a new innovation to the Call of Duty campaign. We call them open combat missions.
The way it was described to us was that you would have one main task to complete, but the level is completely open-ended and more sandbox-oriented, meaning that you can approach and complete it in any way you like. You have your own loadout and can even utilize things like armor vests, kill streaks, hidden weapons, field upgrades, vehicles, and so on. You even get like weapon unlocks that you can replay throughout the level again. This doesn't sound terrible on paper, I guess, but what these levels end up being is a lazily thrown together chunk of Warzone map with one task and like a bunch of weapons and kill streaks and just stuff thrown everywhere. When I was there, I questioned the campaign director on this one because I just wanted to pick his brain and really figure out why they ended up, going with this style of mission. I just wanted them to elaborate on why they decided on this direction. And I was told this, and I quote, "We feel this will be a very replayable campaign and really fun for people to watch. I think it's the most YouTubeable campaign ever." End quote. Now sure, that's all well and good, and I don't doubt they actually went in with those intentions and want the game to be like that. I feel he was being very genuine about wanting to make a good campaign experience. But first of all, it's funny as hell that apparently the most YouTubeable campaign has a copyrighted song in a cutscene. You can't actually stream this campaign on YouTube without getting claimed. It's like, I just don't know what they were thinking with this one. It's obviously, that's just kind of a funny thing to point out, but on a more real note, I could honestly see this open combat level format maybe being fun if it wasn't only solo. The thing is, all of these sandbox elements and open-ended gameplay stuff could actually be pretty fun if the campaign was co-op. How was that not considered before? If you can't do co-op, fine, just make the levels more crafted linear missions, then no problem. But if you're dead set on these open combat levels, for the love of God, it's such a wasted opportunity that it's solo only then. Like, what's even the point at all? Personally, I don't think even a co-op campaign here would have made all the levels great, but still wouldn't have been a complete contradiction in wasted opportunity, and it would have given them something that stands out. It actually baffles me, and I don't get their approach when designing these. Sadly, though, I don't think all of this was Sledgehammer's choice. This was probably done many months ago from Infinity Ward, and Sledge just had to be the ones to stamp their names on it and put on the finishing touches. But regardless, upon hearing this news, I was skeptical, and I was worried about the overall depth to the experience. So then I asked if there was any chance for something like maybe multiple endings depending on player choice, like Black Ops 2's campaign, or hell, even just regular old intel drops to collect. And I got a resounding no on both of those questions. So what? You mean to tell me we have a campaign that's 3 hours long, which most of its runtime is cutscenes, and the levels are a mix of lackluster traditional missions and weird open combat levels, which you cannot play co-op on? Oh, okay, I mean, sure, this might be acceptable if the story was any good, but I mean, oh.
That's why the guards need guns.
Let's talk about Makarov. Vladimir Makarov is the dumbest character in this game, and he makes everyone else look really dumb too. First of all, this is the first direct appearance of Makarov in this story. While it's implied that he had a hand in the events of Modern Warfare 2019 and MW2, they didn't set him up at all in those previous titles. Now, I'm going to be making a lot of comparisons to the old Makarov, and if you have a problem with that, you can take it up with my assistant. I don't even have an assistant. I don't know why I said that. Okay, so first is Makarov's portrayal. In the old games, Makarov was a cold, calculating, and emotionally stone-faced killer. Very rarely did he ever raise his voice. He delivered orders and killed people in a deceptively calm way, and he never seemed bothered or worried or in a hurry at all, just letting his enemies make their own mistakes and capitalizing on them when they do. In a sense, he's much scarier this way, I think. It's a lot harder to get a read on him because he's so coldly expressionless and just doing the most heinous things a human being can do. Contrast this directly with the new MW3, where this Makarov is constantly yelling.
This is our weapon.
He's always shouting and he screams at people to their faces. And I think his tone and attitude just feels like he's doing a caricature of a villain. I gotta be honest, I know a lot of people like him, but I really just don't care for his performance as Makarov. He doesn't give me any of that same energy the old one did, and I don't think that's just nostalgia speaking. Let's break down what they do and how they behave. First of all, Makarov makes his big debut in MW2 with no Russian. Obviously, one of the most shocking and horrific missions in all of gaming. But more so to the point, when Makarov kills someone, he does it only after he makes Roach participate in these horrible acts. Roach was also literally a spy, and Makarov knew it and caught on, yet still made him commit these atrocities and then killed him to frame him in the United States. In Modern Warfare 3, Makarov has some guy executed just because he, I guess, questioned his tactics or ideas or whatever. This just isn't nearly as compelling, and I don't care. And frankly, we just haven't spent enough time seeing Makarov for a proper setup to take place. He hasn't really impacted anything directly we did in the last 2 games, so rushing to set him up here seems very strange. So besides being introduced extremely late in this trilogy and not really understanding what his motivations are, and he behaves a lot different, his acting doesn't do him any favors as well, if you ask me. Remember in the trailer when they baited us that Captain Price was maybe gonna die? Nah, he just inhaled a little bit of Nova 6, had an asthma attack or a coughing fit, and then he was fine. Isn't this stuff supposed to be like why did this guy get his face burned off? Somebody died by inhaling plot armor, give you like gas protection as well. Anyways, forget about that. It doesn't matter. Don't think about it.
I'm fine.
Price and Farah have to go to this like bunker to stop the Nova 6. They're not Nova 6. They're what are these called again? Sarin gas or sarin gas? Sarin gas? I don't remember which ones. I think it's sarin gas, but anyways, Makarov wants to use the big toot missiles to cause attacks that will eventually lead to an all-out global war. So at the silo, the missiles do get launched. Meanwhile, Kate Laswell just casually sneaks into Arklov base with basically no effort in like the worst mission ever. This is case in point what I mean when I say the game is unfinished. This level, when broken down to its constituents, has nothing to it. You basically walk in a straight line, shoot one guy, pick up a thing, walk into a building, cutscene happens, then you run upstairs, and that's the end. It's so painfully shallow, and I hate to always compare it, but to the mission in Cold War, in which you're going undercover in the embassy, is a great comparison. There is so much depth to how you can tackle that situation, whereas there's pretty much one real solution here that's just on the rails on the same path, and everything that all the characters do is boring. Kate gets some flash drive that has something about Makarov's location on it. The whole base gets bombed from the toot missiles that were launched there, and then Kate Laswell is conveniently rescued. Just her, no one else, and there's not an investigation to like, oh my god, we had a spy on our base or anything. Nothing happens after this with this situation, and she's fine even after being exposed to all the gas. Very cool.
Yeah, so for the first time for Call of Duty this year, we're doing a direct sequel. You know, Modern Warfare 2, they asked a lot of interesting questions in their story.
I don't think, but
and Sledgehammer Games is so excited to work with Infinity Ward on the campaign.
There it is. Then we get to Modern Warfare 3's equivalent to No Russian. This is Makarov's big moment to make the audience hate him, and it starts by them boarding a plane, and some of Makarov's goons frame a young woman who was a fighter in Farah's group as a terrorist. They execute it so that it looks like her fault, even though she was completely innocent in the situation and just was trying to help. I do like the chaoticness and the tone of this level for the most part. Like, it feels really tense and stressful like this should be, but it's lacking that true bite. While it's a horrible act and Makarov is responsible for it, him framing an innocent young woman to blame Farah's people somehow isn't quite as powerful as Makarov and his boys literally just gunning down an airport. I mean, hell, Makarov doesn't even kill anyone himself exactly. He leaves a bomb with her and then they just leave. I don't hate this part though, and I do give them props for being able to build tension and atmosphere here. It's a pretty good level, or it's a good sequence, and the confusion on the plane feels realistic, and it's fine, albeit not a great spark that sets everything off.
Nice.
Alex is the dumbest character in this game next to Makarov, and why is he here? We do not know. No one's ever really dead if you didn't see it. Alex walked right into the thing to sacrifice himself, and he's fine apparently, and then also Graves apparently didn't die from the tank blowing up either, which I called, but I just want to say it makes Task Force 141 look really stupid and bad at their jobs. But anyways, Alex is alive, and he's with Farah, and right after this incident, they go off together to the crash site to recover the black box in order to show what really happened on that plane and prevent Makarov from running with the narrative. And then perhaps in the stupidest mission in MW3 that's pointless to the overall plot, we get a flashback from 4 years ago where Makarov pulled off another attack, this time at a sports stadium. Besides the fact that I think this mission is just bait for Warzone fans with Verdansk, I also don't really see any point of this. So basically, Soap and Price are on the scene, civilians are running away, and the inner circle of Makarov's men are posing as police and gunning people down. However, eventually you wreck an ambulance in the tunnel to find our good old boy Makarov. And I don't mean to sound so salty, but God, this campaign drives me insane. Okay, so one of my biggest issues with Modern Warfare 2, this Modern Warfare 2, was that we capture Hassan at some point really early in the game, but they have some lame excuse that they're not technically at war, so that if you did, it would technically be a crime or whatever. Point is, it's a lame excuse, but at least they had some kind of reason where you had to let him go. It's stupid as hell, and spoilers, it's just so that the runtime of the game is longer, but anyways, they at least had some excuse in the game why they didn't kill him. In Modern Warfare 3, there is literally no good reason given why they wouldn't just kill Makarov right then and there. They have no problem wiping out the rest of his men without a second thought. Why does he get any special treatment? You asked, because he's Makarov. You know, he's the guy from Modern Warfare. Yeah, so I guess that plot armor is built real good these days, huh?
You're all dumber than you look.
Something about like, we got him now, we don't got to worry about it, and we can't kill him because we need to know the things he's gonna do next. But it's like, if you kill him, then the things he was going to do, he like can't do anymore. You know, on account of him being dead. Why is this mission even in the game? It does not move the plot along at all. It just explains how 4 years ago they encountered Makarov and they messed up. That's literally it. They learned nothing from that situation other than we should have killed Makarov because that was the obvious thing to do from the start. It just, I don't know. I need to be done. I need to be done. The last thing you want to do in a Call of Duty campaign is make your main protagonist look incompetent and dumb. When you're sitting here literally questioning everything from the character's actions to their motivations, it takes you right out of the experience. And after this level, we're right back to where we were. We need to find Makarov. So, you remember this lady in the white shirt? Yeah, this lady here in like the first cutscene. Apparently her name is Melina, and she's a very important and dynamic character. So much so that she appears for a whole 3 minutes and then is never seen again. So, to get a lead on where Makarov is, they decide to target Melina in her luxurious state on an island and interrogate her. This is about as stupid as you'd expect. She's like, oh, I don't work for Makarov, I just run his finances. And then the boys are like, oh, okay, that's cool, so where is he? And then they threaten her personal bank account, and then that gets her to crack in one of the most embarrassing cutscenes in this whole game.
Why the mask?
To hide my face.
What am I doing with my life? The only thing of any consequence that happens is they found a bank transaction to a thing, and then they're like, okay, bye. This whole story is like chase down a guy to get a thing that will lead you to this other thing that will lead you to a other thing that brings you to another guy that will finally lead you to another thing. It's just so exhausting. And not to mention, after this moment, she is never seen or heard from again. What an amazing and very important character to the Modern Warfare universe.
Pleasure doing business with you.
Call of Duty is known for epic cinematic stories, as Shelby talked about.
I mean, it's all right, like...
Perhaps one of my biggest personal complaints with this campaign is the lack of any structure or escalation. I mean, typically you can feel the tension ramping up and building throughout most of these stories. Usually it feels like the stakes get higher and higher coming to an end point, and this is typically done by having an A story, which is the main stuff, and maybe a smaller B story. Modern Warfare games have been especially known to follow this structure. Modern Warfare 3, however, has like 3 B stories, and nothing seems to have any real urgency or tension or suspense that builds to an end point at all, and it all just feels so off. No story has any other weight than anything else going on. But back to the plot. So keep in mind that we're still chasing down Makarov, by the way. Then we come to a moment where Graves is just working with us again, because that's a thing. It was never actually explained in any real detail how he survived the tank explosion, and I don't care if they talked about it in like a stupid seasonal cutscene. That doesn't count, and frankly, it just makes Task Force 141 look terrible at their jobs. In the old Modern Warfare games, the heroes never left villains alive out of pure idiocy or just a failure to simply finish the mission, but that's a common occurrence apparently here. So anyways, if for some reason you're not actually convinced that this was DLC from Modern Warfare 2 originally, may I introduce you to part 2 of the most boring level in this entire trilogy. And I've already explained how poorly made and boring they made being in an AC-130 in Modern Warfare 2, and I won't reiterate because I don't want to bore you to tears. They make games for that. You would think that if a lot of time has passed to reflect and examine these older missions and see what they did wrong in the last game, they would have been able to course correct or make something better, and they clearly did not, because this AC-130 level is almost as bad as the one in Modern Warfare 2. It's not quite as terrible, it isn't nearly as long, and I will say I will give it credit because you can actually just shoot things and really don't have to wait around sitting for weeks, but it's a pretty bad level still. It's like they clearly made these around the same time with not much different design philosophies. It is marginally better than Modern Warfare 2's though, but I still just don't understand why we couldn't have had the original Modern Warfare 3 level structure where you're in the AC-130 for maybe a couple of minutes, you cut back down to the ground forces and then back up to the sky. That would have been so fun here. It would have been a very unique set piece, and I think would have made this level far more dynamic. But of course, they clearly didn't think about that because they made those two levels around the same time. Now, I will say before we get here, there is a very unique open combat mission where you need to go find and capture one of Makarov's main men, and you need to ascend this tower and go up a bunch of floors. I have to say, I quite like this level, honestly, and it's very different to everything else in the game. It's almost kind of like a Mario level or a Dark Souls level where, you know, you kind of want to trial and error, find the best way up, and then dying will make you reset. You can get different equipment and tools to get up to the top of the level. I can see the vision here, and I think it's fun using different shortcuts and stuff to get there quickly or just brute force it floor by floor. It's a very fun level, but it doesn't get fleshed out as much as it could, in my opinion. I like the idea, though. But still, it's the one mission I will give it credit for that I feel is maybe a small standout in this Modern Warfare 3 campaign, if I'm being fair. I just wish maybe it would have been taken a step further. But something you're going to notice throughout these levels is that the plot doesn't really develop in any meaningful way. And that, coupled with the fact that most of these levels are just so, like, tedious and boring, there's something about them that just doesn't feel quite done. Even for as much as I didn't care for MW2's campaign either, there are some memorable levels, some experimental ones for sure, but it still more or less felt like a complete experience at least. And I'm not totally sure what to pin this on, but I think Modern Warfare 3 had a real lack of something. Maybe it's the music that's not really present, or perhaps the lack of mechanically interesting and complex levels of any kind, or any creative in-game storytelling at all. I'm not totally sure, but this campaign feels very incomplete, and the cutscenes do nothing to make up for it. The lack of music is a big one, and I imagine the big falling out with the composer from Modern Warfare 2's music, and then that being pulled had ripple effects into this one too. Just speaking more broadly for a moment, it feels that the entire experience is missing something, and I think it's a culmination of many factors because the game is incomplete in some sense. So anyways, getting back to our story here, in Modern Warfare 3, things just happened suddenly for no reason whatsoever. At some point, Shepard got captured, which happens off screen, and then you need to go rescue him inadvertently by conducting a normal prisoner rescue operation, and then you have to get him to cooperate while Price and the lads have to resist the urge to off him because he has intel on Makarov. Then there's more boring talking about nothing, and then all of a sudden Shepard and Graves are now testifying in court to sell each other out and stab one another in the back. This amounts to, well, nothing much. I mean, I have no clue where Graves goes from here, and we'll get to Shepard in just a bit, but it's painfully clear that Infinity Ward wrote themselves into a hole with this trilogy. This clearly wasn't as well thought out beforehand as maybe they expected to, and this means that most of the characters just don't have anything to do at all. There's so many people here, like you know what I mean, right? So many people are just along for the ride with no real motivation of their own or any stories individually. Why is Alex still doing this? Wasn't his whole life purpose to sacrifice himself for Farah's cause? Great, like he had that moment. Why is he still hanging around with absolutely nothing to do? Why is Melina here and not helping the Tarnished get to the Erd Tree? What does Gaz want? We originally, in Modern Warfare 2019, he wanted to join Price because he thought he could make a bigger difference. But, you know, he had his arc in that game, and now that's all out the window, and he's just sitting around. What does Ghost want to do? I don't know. Hide his face, I guess? The only person with any kind of clear motivations are Soap, Price, and Shepard, honestly. I mean, the rest of the cast just ran out of things to do. I think this is a big reason why there's no sense of escalation or buildup among many other reasons. Now, finally, we arrive at the last playable mission in the whole campaign. I literally got whiplash my first time playing this because it felt like it just abruptly ended after this moment. Not knowing this was the last level, it just feels like any old typical mission. You're in London, there's a hacker apparently communicating with Makarov, and so in order to not look sus, you have to blend in. Having a cig, doing a piss, trying your best to be British.
Chicken as well, yeah? Chicken. No chew needed.
You follow this person around for a little bit to find out where they hid some kind of flash drive, and then Ghost gets on the cams to scan London and find out where this guy went, so that you can chase him down into the tunnels and prevent Makarov from detonating the train under the English Channel. Most of this level is pretty entertaining, honestly. Like, I mean, compared to what else this campaign has to offer, it is a fun set piece, and in the end, Soap and Price have to work together to defuse a bomb in the last moment. Soap even takes a few bullets in order to prevent the explosion, but somehow Makarov shows up, almost kills Price, and then basically in the inverse of the original Modern Warfare 2, Soap saves Price by distracting Makarov, but Makarov kills Soap in the process and then runs away to escape. The bomb ends up defused and Soap was killed off. In the very next scene, we see Kate Laswell confirm Soap's death, and also note that Makarov escaped but only injured. Soap protected everyone in that train that cost him his life. Gaz, Ghost, and Price have a memorial for Soap and spread his ashes somewhere.
Sleep easy, soldier.
See you downrange, brother. We'll take it from him.
Rest in peace, Johnny.
Then right after, in the Marvel movie post-credit scene, is Captain Price intruding into General Shepard's office and then killing him off screen. You remember in the original Modern Warfare 2 when you as the player had to fight tooth and nail to kill Shepard in one of the most satisfying gaming moments ever? Or in the original MW3 when you struggle against Makarov to finally put an end to his life? It just feels more satisfying because it feels like you finally beat him. You were the one to put a stop to their atrocities and get revenge. I just hate how this moment where Captain Price kills General Shepard is just a boring cinematic, that the death literally happens off screen. It just makes me feel so detached from these characters or what's going on. I mean, they could have just as easily built a small playable level for this moment where you pilot Captain Price and you get to pull the trigger and do it with your own hands. But no, we just have to watch it on a TV show now. When you think about it, this is most likely the end of this story. In the original Modern Warfare 2, General Shepard was killed. In the original MW3, Soap was killed. And the only difference is Makarov lived. And I just don't see Infinity Ward making another Modern Warfare game. I really just don't think they're interested in that, and so the story likely will end here. Which is honestly fine by me, because I'm not interested, nor do I care about what's going on anymore. Like, okay, what the hell happened to Alejandro and Valeria? That was set up in MW2 and went nowhere here. And in Modern Warfare 2019 as well, there's so many plot threads and character arcs that just fell over and died in their tracks. This is by far the most sloppy, disorganized, creatively bankrupt, and unfinished campaign ever. Somehow, it managed to be a new low for the series, which I truly didn't think was possible after Vanguard. The question is, would it be more acceptable if this was simply a DLC expansion add-on for MW2 as it was originally supposed to be? Well, that's for you to decide, but would you have judged it less harshly if it was on MW2? It wouldn't have been any cheaper because the expansion still would have been $70, but would you have more grace for it if it were on just Modern Warfare 2? For me personally, I think I would have. I just didn't like them being dishonest about the substance of the game with the marketing and branding and calling it a brand new title. It seems like they wanted to have it both ways and reap the benefits of less work and a shiny brand new game, but it backfired tremendously. The only memorable thing about Modern Warfare 3's campaign is just how unmemorable it is. I really don't even want them to continue the story because I just don't care anymore. In fact, I'll have a lot of respect for them if they just leave it here. Makarov getting away is not what I expected, honestly, and that was a surprise, I'll give them that. I think we should just end it where it is and move on. Don't drag it out any more than it needed to be. The open combat levels and the general gameplay were very lackluster, and I didn't find any mission in particular, maybe except this one, to be a standout for any good reason. I don't want to be mean for the sake of it, but there's virtually nothing redeemable about this single-player experience. It's so lacking and dull and by the books. Its borderline nonsensical storytelling as well makes it feel like a complete joke, and that would be fine if it was just a fun ride, but most of the fun that could be had instead is just in an animated movie cutscene that you as the player are totally detached from. Now, I can't really blame Sledgehammer for this though. I have to say I feel like this one's on Infinity Ward. Maybe they knew that it was bad and they didn't want to be the ones to attach their name to it, so they used Sledgehammer to be the whipping boy. I don't know, but either way, this campaign is absolutely not worth your time. Do literally anything else for 3 hours, and maybe you won't have the most YouTubeable campaign get copyright claimed on YouTube. Modern Warfare 3's multiplayer, I think I would describe as incredibly fun, but ultimately confusing, because again, just like with Vanguard, I really don't know what it is. Modern Warfare 3 has this awkward combination of things where I'm not entirely sure what it's wanting to be. So we kind of joked about it earlier, but let's break down the constituents of what this is. Modern Warfare 3, at least on launch, was all MW2 original 2009 maps. Every single one from the base game were what's going to be included in this. Obviously, we've progressed a little bit more in Modern Warfare 3's life cycle, and now we have some original maps from Sledgehammer to added to the mix. It's not just MW2 anymore, but it was, and that's what it was being sold as. At the same time, it was also being proposed that all of the new MW2 weapons would be in this game as well. There was this whole carry forward system. So it's basically MW2 on MW2 maps with a few brand new weapons from Sledgehammer, or at least that's what it was, and a few core gameplay changes. And this is where I think the most significant things were made, because when I played this at Sledgehammer before it launched, it was a little different to how it is now. However, the core philosophy of wanting to make a few of the big changes that the community was asking for was still first and foremost in their minds. Stuff like slide canceling and fluid movement came back, even raising the health to 150 HP, and making the gameplay loop feel more solid, I think, was a big priority for them. And they did succeed in in that for the most part. I actually think the feel of the moment-to-moment gameplay in Modern Warfare 3 is much better than last year. I feel like it's a pretty good middle ground between the absolutely cracked out bunny hopping movement of Modern Warfare 2019 and the walking through mud stuck in the sludge, no movement of Modern Warfare 2. I think there is a good middle ground here, and raising the health to 150, I feel was one of the most positive changes. I think with core player mechanics, Sledgehammer really got things right, and they even introduced a brand new one called tax dancing that was not there previously, and this is a cross between ADSing and hip firing. While it's not incredibly useful in a practical sense, it's a very odd input to be able to use it in combat. It is a neat idea, and in some cases can be very helpful. Now, I will say, with this carry forward system that brings almost everything from Modern Warfare 2 into this game, one of the things that don't make it is the perk system, but we'll get to that in a second. What I find interesting is an intelligent choice was made to not make the MW2 guns from last year the dominant meta. They retuned and rebalanced all of the numbers for the Modern Warfare 2 weapons so that the new MW3 guns would still overall have an edge. That you can use them, and some of them are still relatively competitive, but as far as like actual meta weapons, most of them are going to be from the new Modern Warfare 3 stuff, which I think is good because I wouldn't want this to turn into everybody running around with last year's guns and then the new ones kind of just get shafted. So I think that was smart. Stuff like equipment and field upgrades and kill streaks are mostly identical to MW2. Now, I understand that Modern Warfare 3, the original, had very similar streaks to MW2, but at the same time, it was on a totally different system, and they had like the specialist bonus and all that stuff, like the strike package system. There was an innovation there. However, for the most part, this is basically MW2's kill streaks and field upgrades. The perk system is vastly different. MW2 caught a lot of slack for having a weird perk system where you kind of like earn them in-game, which I felt could be cool initially, but I really did not grow to like it. This is a much more traditional perk system called gear, and I don't really know why they just don't call it perks, because it's the exact same thing. But basically, you have realistic pieces of gear, like gloves or boots and stuff like that, and they will all give you bonuses. There's some vests and gear that are incompatible with each other, or that, you know, unlock different options for other gear that you can run, so there's a bit of like a tree going on there, which is interesting. I think I would have preferred just a more traditional perk system, but it's pretty much the same thing. This is fine. The core gunplay is so similar to Modern Warfare 2, again, even down to having the same weapons, and that's fine, but I think something that really would have made this multiplayer stand out and be distinct from MW2 was what Sledgehammer initially wanted to do, from my understanding, was a Pick 10 system, and I mentioned that earlier, but that was their initial idea. They wanted to go back to the Pick 10 system, which I feel, you know, would have got rid of the gunsmith, but I do believe would have been a positive change for this experience. You can just tell that it was Infinity Ward's decision to make Sledgehammer keep their guns and do gunsmith, but interestingly, they removed the entire innovation from Modern Warfare 2 that is attachment tuning. You can't do that anymore here. Obviously, you can still customize everything about the gunsmith, but the attachment tuning once you level a gun all the way up is just nowhere to be found. This seems like a weird innovation to be taken away, but I think it just shows that Sledgehammer really wanted to go a different direction and not do gunsmith at all. Would this have been a very positive change for Modern Warfare 3 multiplayer? Honestly, I think so, and if not, or even if Pick 10 had its faults, I still think it would have made MW3 feel far more distinct, because when I sit down and play this multiplayer, I realize, like, dude, I'm just playing MW2 with slightly different player mechanics, with a bit more movement and a little more health. That's it. Like, I find myself on Farm 18, running around with almost the exact same guns, moving around maybe slightly faster, and I'm like, this is the exact same thing. I don't understand why they added all of last year's maps in if they already just did all of the 2009 maps as well. And then on top of their own original maps, to be fair, the original Sledgehammer maps for MW3 are pretty good. I actually like them a lot. And the 2009 maps, I guess we should probably talk about those. The classics do feel similar but very different here as well, and I think some maps play better than others. Stuff like Scrapyard and Terminal I think play very much the same as they did back in the day. However, things like Favela are totally different now, and they don't have the same feel or flow whatsoever anymore. It's a bit of a mixed bag. You might say that these 2009 maps were simply not made for the more accelerated player movement of modern Call of Duty, but personally I don't feel it's as bad of a problem as I maybe would have expected. They also did, you know, reorient some of the levels proportions to be a bit bigger and expanded so that it feels the same as it did. For example, if a player's movement increases, the level that they're in needs to be bigger to accommodate for that. This is why Halo levels got much bigger after they introduced Sprint. Even though it feels like you're moving faster through them, the square footage makes it still play like an old classic Halo level, generally speaking. I believe this is the philosophy they used for Modern Warfare 3, even though the proportions of the classic maps are pretty similar to their old ones. And there are moments where I do think the movement is not necessarily the most compatible or cohesive thing to play with in them, but I think generally speaking they're okay. Now, I don't think this is that crazy to say, and I even mentioned this in my Vanguard review. I think recently Sledgehammer has done well with multiplayer. Even though I think Vanguard struggled in terms of an identity, I still thought its core-to-core gameplay loop in Vanguard multiplayer was pretty fun, and I feel the exact same here. I actually think this is one of Sledgehammer's best multiplayer experiences, even though I don't really know what it is. Is it MW2 Remastered? Is it Modern Warfare 2 2022? Part 2, like, I know that sounds crazy, but like that's where we're at now. Everything with the UI, the HUD, the guns, kill streaks, perks, etc. are all Modern Warfare 2 stuff last year, making it very clear that this was an expansion pack or a premium DLC. However, they did make a ton of changes to movement and core player mechanics that I think are all positive. Basically, this is like my fanfic version of MW2. Literally, almost all of the things I complained about in my last review have been mediated and modified here, which is interesting, and I think it makes the game a lot more fun. I just think the only thing holding it back is, frankly, Infinity Ward. I don't think they allowed Sledgehammer to do all of the things they wanted to do and take it to the next level, such as pick 10 system or maybe even doing classic perks again. It felt like they really had their own vision for what they wanted to do, but that was being bottlenecked by a lot of Infinity Ward's choices. I do give Sledgehammer the benefit of the doubt here, where they tried to make the best out of a not optimal situation. Just being given this stuff from Infinity Ward and even making changes that the community wanted against Infinity Ward's wishes is very interesting, and I give them some respect for that. But do many of the same problems that plagued Modern Warfare 2 still plague MW3? Yes, absolutely they do. In fact, a lot of the stuff with skill-based matchmaking is still just as prevalent, if not more, in this game. So much so that they had to literally address the situation in this big community post, in which they pretty much said exactly what I expected, which is, yes, we do have a matchmaking algorithm, and yes, skill is a small part of it, which is a non-answer that the community was certainly not satisfied with, but it's all of the stuff about the Activision patents that I talked about in my Modern Warfare 2 review. Those are all still applicable here as well. I mean, it's basically the same thing as last year, and I know that's like the Call of Duty meme, but I mean that in the most genuine sense here. Now, I want to highlight some of the changes they made that I felt were great, even just little ones, like making actual player calling cards pop up on the screen again instead of just the bland generic one from MW2 is amazing. Player cards actually feel a little bit more meaningful again, and also the kill pop-up animations are sick. And I don't want to be that guy and say that I influenced this, but I just do remember playing a pre-alpha at Sledgehammer, and the kill pop-up animations were nasty and not very good looking, and I brought it up and I complained about it, and wouldn't you know, when the full game comes out, they come out much different and they look great. So whoever made that decision, big thanks to them, and I'm very happy to see that. Now, here's a weird one. They kind of only go halfway with this because, you know, a lot of the identity stuff is like, oh, in the original MW2, we loved having the factions, and they bring them back here. We have Task Force 141, you know, we have the Rangers and the Spetsnaz and everything, but they only go halfway because, like, you get the logo pop up, but it doesn't really mean anything. Like, the character models are just whatever, and then also there's no announcers for them either. So I don't really understand the point of having this pop up if you really don't see it or, you know, feel it at all throughout your match. It's just stuff like that where they made a lot of strides making this a very unique multiplayer experience, but I just still think it's bottlenecked by a lot of the choices from Infinity Ward. They couldn't quite break away from that mold to really become its own thing, which is a damn shame, and I hope maybe in their next title that becomes more of a possibility. I guess we'll have to wait and see, because looking at it from a big picture perspective, I think Sledgehammer has actually been doing really well with multiplayer. I'm not gonna lie, I think this is the most fun multiplayer in quite a while. It's very enjoyable. The only drawbacks to me are the fact that it feels so much like last year's MW2 and not in a good way, and also you can tell they haven't really quite been able to break away, even though they've gotten very close. I just think that if you gave Sledgehammer free reign to design the multiplayer exactly how they would want to, it might be one of the best experiences of all time, because I think the core gameplay is actually great here. I really don't have as much to say about kill streaks and create a class and stuff like that this year because I've already covered it in my Modern Warfare 2 video. It's just so odd. I feel like like I've already talked about most of this stuff, even though I technically haven't for this game. But it's all the same if you've played, last year's experience. That's really where it comes down for me. I feel Modern Warfare 3 multiplayer is incredibly fun, and I actually enjoy it. It's maybe one of the best parts of the game. It's not really their own multiplayer, however. It's Modern Warfare 2 maps from 2009 with last year's guns and maybe a little bit of new stuff from Sledgehammer, although the stuff that they did specifically I really enjoy. So I'm looking forward to maybe their next game or a project where they're the lead developer, and I would like to see what they do when given free reign with their multiplayer, because I think they have a good structure here, and with a bit more creative control, I feel they would be able to tap in probably one of the best multiplayer Call of Duty experiences that could be made. At least in my opinion, Sledgehammer has a pretty good sense of what makes a Call of Duty multiplayer fun. They do have that fun factor. I feel they really nail how a game feels. Even with Vanguard's multiplayer, I think that feels good, even though I don't love a lot of the stuff in the game in terms of content, not really my favorite. They at least get the feel right. So if they can nail the aesthetic and the tone and visuals and let Sledgehammer take the feel of the game, I feel that's a winning combination in my opinion. And I think Modern Warfare 3 multiplayer could have been a lot worse, but it also probably could have been a lot better as well. So, I have a very interesting history and relationship with Modern Warfare 3 Zombies because this mode is unique. It's one of a kind, and it's something that has definitely divided a community. Even though it's actually gotten a very positive reception, that was not speculated to happen at all. In fact, I was one of the first people in the world to play this mode, and I don't sound that to brag. I bring this up because it's very important context to how the community felt before this launched. Now, we realized that Modern Warfare Zombies was not going to be a round-based mode. The traditional classic zombies that has been featured in nearly every Call of Duty game up to this point would not be a thing here, although they were doing a zombies mode, and so that was intriguing. And when we went to Treyarch, we were able to play one match of this, and that was it. And also, we were not able to even look through a lot of the schematics or acquisitions menus at all. And you'll know, if you've played Modern Warfare Zombies, that's like the entire gameplay loop. That's a key part of it. Pretty much all of the progression in this game is tied to the acquisition and schematic system, which we were not able to engage with at all. We just played a random match of, shooting zombies on a Warzone map, and it felt just incredibly lukewarm. So that's why myself and all the other YouTubers came away and were just like, yeah, I mean, it's fine or whatever. It's not really anything fun or special. There was a lot of, if you like Outbreak, you'll like this mode, and that seemed to be true in the moment. However, I don't think that's a good comparison anymore. I actually think Modern Warfare Zombies and Outbreak are very different in a lot of ways. Even though Cold War's Outbreak was supposed to be an extraction mode like this is now, I think this is the second iteration of Outbreak, a spiritual successor of it in a lot of ways, but I don't know if they're that comparable, honestly. I think this attracts a very different audience. It has a very different purpose and stuff, and I was playing it at home after the Treyarch event and was realizing how much fun I was having. There was a lot to do in the beginning, getting all of these story missions done, which are little tasks you accomplish because, of course, it's not really based on survival anymore. You go in and you have this big open world to do a lot of tasks and story missions, which will bring you to different points in the game, giving you different boss fights, etc. I suppose a lot of people were okay with having this mode because it's actually more similar to DMZ than it is to Outbreak or round-based zombies. And for people who wanted round-based zombies for this year, it was never going to happen anyways. So a lot of people were like, well, it's better having something than nothing, and I suppose that you can make that argument for this mode. However, it does make some very strange deviations to the zombies formula, and I don't think people want this to become the norm. Here's the weird thing. Activision said that this was the most successful and popular third mode that Call of Duty's ever done, which will be very ironic when we talk about where the state of the game is now. But in the beginning, I was realizing, wow, there's actually a lot of people playing this. There's an audience for it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I was making a ton of content, and I was very much enjoying myself, expecting support would continue on an already pretty solid base game. It surprised me because I didn't think I was gonna like this. And when not being able to do any of the fun things like interact with the acquisitions and schematics when playing at Treyarch, it made this mode feel incredibly hollow. And that's what leads me into how the basic structure of Modern Warfare Zombies is set up. And the way that the content is experienced is quite unlike normal zombies. Now, in a traditional zombies map, the content to be experienced is the survival and then obviously doing its main quest or Easter egg and all of the things that come along with it. Generally speaking, on your first first playthrough, if you know what you're doing, you can experience all of the content right away. You know, you can jump in and do the Easter egg either with solo or with friends. Like, there's not much of a barrier to go in and start experiencing the content. Maybe it might be a little bit difficult to do Easter eggs, as they can be quite challenging. Not to mention, they do require a lot of knowledge beforehand, and that's what made Easter eggs the main content. They were gated by knowledge and skill usually. Modern Warfare 3 Zombies has a fair amount of boss fights and a couple of different story beats that you can participate in and get cutscenes like you would a normal Easter egg. However, the difference is here, the actual content is no longer gated by knowledge or skill, it's mostly gated by time. Story missions aren't particularly hard at all, like they don't require much skill to complete, but you need to be jumping into multiple games, doing very specific tasks to check off a list, very DMZ. This is what gates much of the end game content, such as the Dark Ether Rifts or, you know, these different boss fights that you can experience. There are a few that you can do in the normal map, but most of the actual end game content, you have to grind through all of these story missions first. The point I'm getting at is they made the content locked behind a time gate rather than a skill or knowledge gate. For an average player, experiencing all that Modern Warfare 3 Zombies has to offer is gonna take around 35 to 45 hours just to get some of these Dark Ether Rifts and do the boss fights and everything and chew through all your story missions. It's gonna take quite a while. Even if you're really good at the game and you're very knowledgeable about it, you can't actually access most of this stuff without first grinding through these very arbitrary tasks. This shift to the time gate, I think, is a lot of people's big problem with this mode, especially hardcore zombie fans, and why they may be turned off. Now, ironically, this goes right up DMZ's alley and is exactly how that was set up. And I had this realization when playing MWZ, and I saw it happen with DMZ as well. This mode is quite literally made and engineered to waste your time. And I don't necessarily mean that as a negative. Partially, yes, in the sense that a lot of the time spent in-game is doing mindless, meaningless tasks that you're not going to remember or even care about in a couple of hours. And the content that you will remember is very few and far between, and it's only experienced after all of this meaningless grinding. Now, admittedly, the stuff that is fun is grinding for the schematics and acquisitions that you can get in-game, especially in the beginning when you're just a brand new player starting out with nothing. It's very fun actually unlocking all of the little things, then jumping into your next match with some better gear. But I would say it gets old quickly, and if you think about it, if there was no arbitrary task gate like these story missions that would block you out from experiencing like the end game boss fights, and let's just say you had all of the acquisitions and schematics from the start, what would even be the point of playing this mode? I mean, really, like once you unlock everything, there's nothing at all to really play for, and it gave me the exact same hollow feeling I got when I played it at Treyarch. It was so bizarre. At home, as soon as I unlocked all of the schematics and then I played another match, it felt just like it did back then, and the reason is there was no more progression to be had anymore, and I think that is one of the big issues with this. Like, I can play a round-based map because the progression you experience is match to match. You start out round one with nothing, and you go, you know, throughout the game and get your equipment and weapons, and you know how a zombies match progresses. It just doesn't really happen the same way here, and you realize that the core gameplay is incredibly disconnected and hollow once you have all of the unlocks, or when you're not actively pursuing those things anymore. So it's a quite strange dynamic, although I have to say I still find this mode fun, even though I realized in the beginning that these story missions were just meant to like retention me, and that's what this mode is built for, is player retention, not necessarily player satisfaction. Even despite knowing all that, I couldn't deny you that I really enjoyed playing this mode. I made a lot of content on it and I was having a ton of fun, and I was under the impression that the amount of content that we received on launch would, relatively speaking, be the blueprint for the post-year of support going forward, and we could expect more stuff like this, maybe new maps and stuff like that, but boy was I wrong. Recently, I was on a call with developers, and I just basically asked the question because I wanted to gauge where they were at with continuing support on this mode, and I just asked if there was any new perks or, you know, enemy types coming, and they basically just flat out said no. And to make matters worse, the rumors have claimed, and it seems to be true right now, that Treyarch have completely left working on Modern Warfare 3 Zombies. And you might think that this is a bad thing, but they've been pulled off to work on COD 2024, you know, their actual next Treyarch title. So I can understand Treyarch being pulled off of this, but it is a shame because, like, of how good of a launch it had that nobody really expected. It did a lot better than was previously forecasted, I'm sure, and if Activision really had the numbers that this was their strongest performing third mode, you'd think that they would do something to double down and continue support on this, instead of just giving it to High Moon Studios to finish out the rest of the year. Because that's the thing, the post-launch launch content for Modern Warfare Zombies has been abysmal, or at least Season 2 has. Season 1 was pretty good, but it seems like development more or less is done for this mode as far as any big sweeping changes. The reason I asked that question is not because I inherently just care about perks or enemy types. I just wanted to gauge where they were at with how much they were still investing into this mode, and it doesn't seem like a whole lot now. They're going to be doing, from what it sounds like, the bare minimum for the rest of the year, which is sad because I genuinely loved this mode and I didn't expect to. It's not a replacement for round-based zombies, and I wouldn't say I enjoy it more than a traditional map or that game mode for that matter, but if Treyarch has to be pulled off of this to no longer support Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, to develop COD Zombies on 2024 in their next title, then I can understand that, even though it is bittersweet. Another problem with this game mode that they haven't quite figured out is the cooldown system. And so the way this works is when you acquire a schematic, that means you permanently unlock that item or equipment in-game forever, albeit you can only spawn one in one time, and then it has a cooldown for a period of time depending on its rarity. So for example, you spawn in a tier 3 crystal to automatically upgrade your weapon to, the highest pack-punch tier. That will have a 3-day, 72-hour cooldown, so you can't use them all the time. I've seen a lot of people hate this system, the fact that you have to wait to be able to use these things that you've unlocked, and I kind of get it to some extent, but I also don't think that just not having a cooldown is a solution either, because they don't want you to be maximally loaded out every single game all of the time. I guess the idea is you need to be able to stagger these things out, but between, being able to completely break the game with a tombstone glitch, which I won't even get into, and I think it just makes people want to play the game only every couple of days then. Assuming you're not doing the glitch, I think a lot of people will agree with me that you've gotten to a point where you only want to play Modern Warfare Zombies only every couple of days when your stuff is cooled down again. And I don't really know what the solution is to that, but I've noticed it's a problem, and because this mode is so new, I don't really see a way around that right now, or at least not an obvious one. But this mode is very fun, and they've got good bones on it. It's just not a replacement for round-based zombies, but I think it's a valiant effort, and for being a scrapped mode, I would say they made something decently fun. It's just so weird and such a shame to cut the support on this short in like the middle of the year, and that just goes to show how valuable this live service model can be, and more so to the point, this mode will die one day, because the problem is, and unlike any other zombies mode, you can boot up Black Ops 1 right now and play it by yourself. Eventually, in Modern Warfare 3, albeit probably a long time from now, you will not be able to play it anymore, because the way this mode functions is online only with a lot of players. You need to be able to fill up a lobby, and so if you cannot find lobbies to play anymore, this mode will be literally inaccessible. Do I believe that Activision made Treyarch dig up this mode as a scrapped project to slap onto Modern Warfare 3? I do. Do I think it's a fun game mode? Also, yes, I very much do enjoy myself, although I have to say I'm a lot more disappointed and much less motivated to play now, knowing that there's not going to be anything major or significant that comes to this mode for the rest of the year. And that's partially why I also decided to make this video now, because for a lot of my COD reviews, I tend to wait until the typical season has run its course, although I just don't expect anything big or major to come to any aspect of the game now. They're going to be ramping up for Treyarch's next game, and this is going to be left by the wayside. And again, just like with the multiplayer, if Treyarch maybe had more of a workforce on this and had their time and energy to be able to fully invest in this mode and make it something unique and make it come into its own, as they almost got here with this, like they were on the precipice of making something insane and amazing, it just feels like the rug was pulled and they fell right before the finish line, which sucks, man, because, this mode wasn't projected to do well, and at least for myself and a lot of my friends and colleagues and viewers really enjoy this mode. Do I think it will come back in a future Call of Duty? I mean, who knows? Apparently it was incredibly successful, but round-based zombies is coming back in 2024, which is what I feel a lot of zombie fans want, and I don't know what the future of this mode will be, but eventually it will be cut short and die one day. You won't be able to play it anymore. As far as story goes, I really have no idea what the hell is going on in this new Modern Warfare storyline, nor do I think it's conveyed all that well. There are some cool moments and a few cutscenes that I really enjoy and I think that are fairly intriguing, but as a mode, I don't know if this reached the potential that it really could have, and that's what sucks about it, and that's what's frustrating. I don't think Treyarch's at fault for this. I don't think Sledgehammer or Infinity Ward are at fault for this. I think this is an Activision thing to make this mode come out. It was probably a scrapped project, and then they, bail on it midway through the year so that Treyarch can actually go work on their thing, which is justified, fair enough. We want them to be working on their next game as well, but it does feel a little bit sad for people who genuinely really enjoyed this mode for a lot of reasons, and for it to be cut off at the knees just feels very disappointing. Before we wrap up, real quick, I just want to give a big thank you to all of my members. You guys make this kind of content possible, and I am so unbelievably grateful for everybody who does continue to support that allows me to make videos like this. If you want to become a member to appear at the end of future videos, it would be greatly appreciated. No obligation, but thank you everybody who does in advance. I appreciate you. So, at the end of the day, what do we really have with Modern Warfare 3? Many people were complaining that this just feels like a $70 DLC, and that's because in some sense, it literally is. While they tried some things to make it feel like its own standalone product, I don't think the campaign is nearly long or complex enough to cut it. The multiplayer is basically last year's game with a few core tweaks and maps from 2009, and Zombies is borderline a scrapped mode that they decided to add on to this product to help justify its price tag. Even though there are some things I really find fun and enjoyable about MW3, I cannot say that this is exactly the most unique or special game. I think Modern Warfare 3 is an embarrassment to be called a full game. Would it justify itself as a DLC? Maybe, but that's not really my call to make. It just feels so disingenuous to present this as a brand new video game when all of its constituents are just repurposed and repackaged old assets and experiences from years prior and or scrapped modes. It doesn't really feel like much of its own new game, and so there isn't much to point at and say this is what Modern Warfare 3 did that was unique and this is what it made it memorable for years to come. I don't think it's actually going to have a lot of that retaining staying power like many old classic Call of Duty games do. The game is technically not over yet, and there are a few more seasons that have yet to come out at the time of me making this. However, I don't really foresee any major changes being implemented that will fundamentally change this content from the ground up. We pretty much get what we have now, and I think they're gearing up for their future Call of Duty titles. I think the lesson at the end of the day here is don't be dishonest about what you're selling. You live and die by your reputation, and I'm not sure this one did any favors for Activision or for Call of Duty.